Yeah, hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, and is my screen visible?
Yeah, that too.
All right, great, great. Okay, great. Okay, so today I'm just going to talk about some basic stuff regarding steel construction. Okay, and what I will be doing right now is I'll be showing you guys a short video which I had made to show some of the ways in which different steel members are connected to each other. Yeah. So the way this will work is like I have taken the example of like a small like a factory like a shed, and how different structural members are used and how that structural grid gets formed. So that is basically the idea behind this video. So as you can see, on this screen, there is a grid that we had is more. There's a 3 meter by 3 meter grid that has been formed, and so we begin by placing our columns in that 3 by 3 meter. Now here the columns are at 6 meters grid from each other. Okay, and you can see that because this is a factory building, it needed to have an open space in the middle with a columnless space in the middle. So the columns are arrayed around the periphery. All right. Now that sounds fine, but the main question here is how do the columns actually get connected to each other, and how does that middle part get spanned? Okay. So this is for what we'll be first looking at is how we kind of form this kind of a structural grid. So you got these columns. Now next comes the floor. Now you can see what is happening here, that at one end of the factory we have a mezzanine floor. Okay, and that is getting formed by means of all these by this kind of a structural grid. Now I'll just explain how this grid is getting formed. So you can see that there are the columns at the periphery, and also I have added here columns in the middle because because we don't need the open space at the end. And this beams are the primary beams are spanning across these columns. So you can see the primary beams along the periphery that are spanning across the columns, plus there is a primary beam in the middle. Okay. Now what that does is that it breaks the span up into smaller spans. Okay, so you can see now that there is this one smaller span is here, one smaller span is here, and once I place these three primary beams, all I have to do is worry about how I span across these shorter spans. Okay, and which I have done by the means of these secondary beams. All right, and once the secondary beams are in place, we then place the tertiary beams. All right, so you can see that the beams are resting on the columns, then the other beams are resting on the primary beams, and the tertiary beams are resting on the secondary beams. Okay, this is basically how that grid is getting formed. Now how you now form the floor finish, that's entirely up to you. You can have a timber floor on this, you can have an RCC floor on top of this, whatever. Okay, I'll come back to that point a bit later on. Also you can see, yeah. So as you can see now, this structure is going to be double height because obviously we have the mezzanine there as well, and now we don't actually get these kind of situations where one entire I section is going to form the whole column. So we kind of join these I sections together. You can see that is that happening in this particular situation. Yeah, how we do that, I'll come that to that as well. Okay. The question about how that middle part was going to get spanned. Okay. Now here we have spanned this the large middle section, which is about 12 meters in length, by the means of these lattice girders. Okay. These are called as lattice girders. What it means is they're formed of these formed of angle sections. Okay, which form like a lattice or form like a sort of a truss. Okay, like a flat truss. And what that does is it gives you the effective depth of this much. This is I think about 1.5 meters effective depth. Okay, but doesn't have as much material in it, so it's comparatively lighter. Okay, and what these lattice girders are going to do now are they are going to provide the location where the north light trusses can span. So you can see that these are the trusses that are forming the roof. Okay, here they are spanning across these columns, so that's fine. But in the middle, as you can see, since there is no column, they are spanning across these girders. Okay, so in simple words, the truss is resting on the girder is resting on the column. All right. Also, one more thing I should point out is that if you look at these beams over here. Okay, which are, I don't know if a mouse is visible on the screen, but I'm talking about the beams that are between the columns, okay, where there is no floor. Okay. Now, if you look at these beams, the point, what is the point of those beams? All right. Now, actually speaking, there is no floor here. There is nothing here. So, what is the point of those beams? The point of those beams is to break the length or the effective length of these columns. Okay. If the columns are allowed to just stand like this, what will happen is they're going to start to buckle and that's going to start to bend. Now, this is something, a concept which I think you will be covering in your structures class. But what I'm trying to what you can understand is that if a column is allowed to become too long, it starts to become unstable in the lateral direction. So we need to have bracing for those columns, and that's why the bracing has been provided here in the form of this beam. Yeah. So I'll just come to the very basic column to column connection. Okay. Now, as far as steel connections go, they are in a way very similar to timber connections, but also in a way very different from timber connections. Now, what would you do in a timber situation? Is that you would actually cut the two parts in a particular way. Yeah, right. You would create some kind of a joinery between them, and then you would join them together. Now, that is not what we do in the situation of steel. In a steel connection, we connect two members through a third member. Okay, and that third member you can see over here, and this is called as a gusset plate. Okay, so what the gusset plate does is that it spans across these two members. So there's a column here at the bottom, there's a column here at top, and there's a gusset plate here which is connected to both the columns. Okay, and that is how the connection actually gets formed. And you can add a weld here as well. That is also fine. I think you have covered welding and bolting and riveting those things in your lectures. So I'll not get too much into detail of that. Here I have shown bolted connections between the plate and the columns. Okay, so I'll just, so this is your first column. The second column will come on top like this. Obviously, will not, it's not a exact representation of how the process works, because nobody's going to like place the column like this and then go away and then come back to do the welding. There'll be these plates will be in place before this column gets, the second column gets placed over there. But this is just for your understanding. So you have this now. Here you can see it's a very weak connection. Even if I weld the entire joint between the two, okay, the connection is going to be rested only on that weld, which is not going to be very stable. So it requires lateral support. So that's basically how I would give the lateral support. So I'm placing the two plates on the two sides. Then I place the on the two flanges, then on the plate on the web, and then we bolt the plates, and that forms your connection. Now that is for the connection between two columns of the same size. This is where the columns are of different, the stanchions are of different size. So you can see there's a larger stanchion below. The upper stanchion is smaller. So the connection pretty much happens in the same way. There is no real difference in it, except that here we are going to add some packing plates between the two columns, between the two plates, to make up for that gap that is between the two sides, the sizes of those two columns. So again, you can see it's a similar situation. It's a similar situation. You have the main column, the second column, which is smaller than the first column, the base plate on the flange, the web, the second base plate along with the packing plates along the flanges. Okay, and then we have the bolts. Okay. The second connection I'm going to talk about is the column to beam connection. This is something very interesting. You can see over here that there are I sections which are forming the beams, and there is of course there's a stanchion which is forming the column. Now, how exactly would you go about placing these to each other? Now, here you can see one more thing. If you notice, there are bolts over here, but there are no bolts here. Okay, because this I have imagined as a welded connection, and I'll tell you why as well in a moment. Even here you can see there is no welded connection here. There is no bolt here, but there's a welded connection. Again, I'll explain what that means. Yeah, so as you can see, there are these beams that will be there, which will have to be placed. Now, obviously, the column will be there first, then I'll bring in the beams and I'll place those beams here. But how exactly will I place them? The way that will happen is that, okay, so first, before the beams are even brought over there to the place where they are supposed to be kept, these kind of cleats, these are called as cleats, which are formed of angle sections, okay, will be welded onto or bolted onto, depending on the situation, to your beams. Okay, so you can see these cleats that are being added. Now, what these members do is that they add surface area to the connection between the beam and the column. Okay, if I don't have these, then the beam and the column will be connected only by the means of the surface area of their respective cross sections, which is like will be very small. Okay, and that is not strong enough for our purpose where we are trying to make a where we're trying to make a mezzanine floor. So we add the cleats to the beams, and at the same time, the column itself also gets prepared to receive the beams. So here we can see that the column, we have placed these angles, these cleats as well, but these are placed onto the column. And the reason for this is that these are the places where the beams will get received. Okay. Now, as you might imagine, these are very heavy members. Sometimes you might use machines or cranes to lift them up, and you can't, and they have to be of a perfect level. So you cannot be on the site say okay, oh, just like hold it in place and then try to adjust it accordingly. There is no possibility of that happening. So but what you can do is you can place these cleats in place, or these are called as seat cleats, SEAT, seat. Okay, you can place these angle sections as seat cleats in place first hand, so you can place them at the proper height and proper level. Then you can check the levels as well. Okay, and then when the when the other beams come, they can simply get placed over here. So they're placed, and then after they get placed, these connections can be made. The bolts and the welds can be made. So you can see that first I have the seat cleats that is placed on the column. Then the angle section or the beam comes and sits on those seat cleats, and then the bolting is done. Okay, and this can be done over there. Obviously this is done in the field. It's done on the place where it's supposed to be done. That's why it's kind of an easier connection to be done, to be made. The next one I'm talking about is the beam to beam connection. Yeah, so let me just go. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so here we can see how a secondary beam is resting on a primary beam. All right, or when I say resting on, it doesn't mean resting on top of it. I mean, a lot of people make this mistake that on means on top of. I don't mean that. I mean resting on means it's putting its load on this secondary beam. Okay, and on this primary beam. Sorry, and if you can see what might be the issue here is that the webs the webs of the two beams need to meet each other, right? Web meaning that vertical part in between. Okay, like the eye section is there. The two upper and the bottom parts are called as the flanges. The middle part is called as the web, as you know. I think this has been covered for you. So the webs need to meet each other, but the flanges will get in the way. So what we do is, in that case, we cut off the flanges. Okay. So the flanges are cut in that shape. Okay, in order for the web to come and sit and meet with the other web. So here we can see how that is done. So here the flanges have been cut. We add the cleats are added. Okay, and then the connection is made. Okay, and then we can bolt it, and then that connection gets formed. All right. Now this is a situation where both the beams are of the same. We can say they're of the same size, the same depth, I should say. All right. But there is a situation where the beams may not be of the same depth. They might be of different depths. In which case, again, it's not a very different sort of exercise. It's now here I want specifically the top portion of the beams to get flush. Okay, so what do? I just cut off so here we have this. I place a seat cleat here at the height where the secondary beam is going to come, and that's welded on. And then the secondary beam comes and sits, and that's where I form the connection. And only the top portion or the top web flange of the beam will get cut for that situation. Now here we can see how the girders are put together. Okay. Let me just okay. Now you can see here how the girder is actually being formed. All right. Now the girder is actually made up of different smaller elements which are joined together. Now how are they joined together? You can see here. I'll just zoom into this. There. So you can see that this girder has got these cords okay, which is that there's a top chord here, there's a strut here, there is a post here, there is a strut here, okay, and all of these are made up of two different angle sections, okay. They can be T sections, but they are not T sections here for a reason, and I'll tell you what that reason is in a moment. But here what is happening is that the connection between the two, you can see that there is this one and there is this one, and they are connected through the means of this gusset plate, okay. This is called a gusset plate, GUSSET, all right. And the gusset plate, as you can see, is sandwiched between these two members, these two angle sections, equal angle sections, I should say, and they are both welded to the same gusset plate, and that's where the connection actually happens. Okay. Similarly, you can see this connection. This is where two sections of the lattice girder are meeting, and you can see that there is this top chord here. Okay, there is a post here, and there is the there is a strut here, and all of them are coming here and meeting, and they are meeting at the gusset plate. Okay. Now the way I would design this is, first obviously I would make a single line drawing of this. Okay, and that single line would represent the center lines of these members. All right. And once I get those center lines in place, then I would kind of offset those center lines to get these members of mine, the width and the size of these members. Okay. And I have to leave a space here between they can't touch each other. So I simply truncate them here at a distance of say about 5 mm from each other, and then the gusset plate would come in between them, and that's how the connection would get formed. Now here they are all welded connections. So you have this, and the gusset plate comes in. Then the other members come in and attach to the same gusset plate. Okay, and you can see how this structure is getting formed. Now there are a couple of there are ways of doing that. Obviously, you would have the whole truss being not the truss, sorry, the whole lattice girder being formed at the ground level itself, and then kind of hoisted onto the place and placed on top of the column. And I just okay, and here's how the truss is getting formed. Now this is specifically a north light roof truss. Okay, and you can see that the way this is getting formed is also the same as how the other section was getting formed. Oops. Okay, so that is the end of the video. I'll just keep this here, but I want to go back to the I don't know if this is still sharing or what. I admit, sorry.
It's sharing. It's sharing.
It's still sharing. Okay, okay.
Yeah, but right now you can see only a black screen.
Yeah. I know. Let me just go back to my Teams and.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a question. Do the beams work like the struts on a wooden chair? I don't know what you mean by
Shantanu.
I know. I'm sharing something else.
That was when you're talking about how the column's effective depth gets reduced by the beams. So is that how, like, when the chairs have like that strut between the all four legs, which kind of prevents the chair from collapsing?
No. The struts are there for a different reason. The struts in the chair, they are there for the reason of not allowing the legs of the chair to kind of separate out. Okay, but I'll come back to this. I just want to explain this part first. Okay, can you see the SketchUp screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see over here now. This is a little bit of a different sort of a detail here, but essentially the same one. Okay. So you can see that the. Just want to zoom into this over here. Yeah, you can see here that there are these two are the angle sections that as you can see, there's this one and there's this one. With these are the ones which are forming the top chord of the uh, of the lattice girder, and as you can see here, the lattice girders are the ones which are spanning across this larger span. Okay. Now to answer Shravan's question, the reason why the lattice girder is like this is that I don't know if this I just hide this for a moment so it will be even clearer what we are talking about. Yeah. So the reason why the lattice girder is the way it is that if you look at the span that this has been staying, this is about 12 meters. Okay, this span. All right. Now, if I were to take a beam like this and try to span it 12 meters, the beam would have to be really deep. All right. And in the Indian standard sections, the deepest I section you can get is about 2 feet, 600 mm. All right. And that might be enough for this, but it will be extremely heavy. And plus, you also have to have the truss and all that. So there are other considerations as well. So instead of that, what I do is I use these smaller sections, these smaller I sections, and put them together in the form of this kind of a lattice girder, okay, which is forming this kind of a beam member. Okay, this entire thing is one beam, by the way. The girder is like one beam, but they are like formed by the means of these different intermediate members. And I use that to span across this particular thing. You will be able to see this girder. Like if you go and see any bridge that has been built, like I believe there is a Kennedy Bridge in South Bombay in near Girgaon, near your Opera House and areas that area where you will be able to see this kind of a construction. Okay, most of the railway bridges also will be able to see this kind of a construction. If anybody stays in Kharghar, there is a skywalk that goes across the highway from the Kharghar station to the residential area, and you will be able to see this over there as well. Okay, the point is that here we are trying to increase the depth of the beam without increasing the weight of the beam. Okay, so that is basically how this lattice girder will gets formed in this particular case. And you can see that here that these cords that are these these posts that are there in the girder, and these struts are also formed. These struts are actually there for bracing. Okay, they are forming a total frame, because if these struts are not there, then these joints might distort. Okay, I think in your structures you might have learned about frames, right? Deficient frames, redundant frames, perfect frames, things like that. So this is the same sort of idea over here. Okay, and then if you see here, when I add the north-light truss to this situation, what I get is that the cord over here, the post over here, actually also forms a part of the north-light roof truss. So you can see how that connection is happening. I will just zoom into that part a bit. Yeah. Okay. So here you can see that the post over here is also a part of the north-light truss, and the truss का जो tie होता है, which is here at the bottom, is again getting connected to the bottom cord of the lattice girder by the means of this gusset plate. Yeah, you can see that over here. And again, the strut of this truss is also getting connected to the gusset plate over here, which is getting connected to the top cord of the lattice girder by the means of these two cleats. So you can see how that is working out. See, the whole point of this, the whole point of looking at a steel connection is to see how we maximize the surface area between the two connections. Right now, here we don't need a cleat, because यहाँ पे the flat part of the angle section is getting connected to the gusset plate. But here the gusset plate is kind of standing upright on top of this top cord, okay, of the lattice girder, and that will obviously not be a very stable connection. So we add these things to sort of create that support. Okay, and plus when you add this, you get that much of extra surface area through which the connection can be formed. And so that is the kind of the connection between the two parts. And then you can see these things. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so you can see these smaller sections over here, which are these things over here. Sorry, these things. Okay? It's like all sorts of groups within groups. So it's yeah. But if you can see these, can anybody imagine what function they fulfill? These members
Holding the roof.
Holding
covering.
the roof. No, actually not holding the roof covering, because if you put them only over here, how would they hold the roof covering? How would they hold the roof covering between these two members, right? Because see, what are these called, by the way? If you remember from your first year, what are these members called in a truss? the top member that slopes down. What is it called?
Rafter.
It's called a principal rafter.
In this case, principal rafter. Right.
Yeah, it's a principal rafter, right? So now what happens above the principal rafter?
Purlins.
Perfect. Purlins. 10 points to Gryffindor. Okay. So purlins are correct. So purlin is correct. So you're going to place your purlins across these rafters. Okay. And you can see that since these rafters are across these trusses and these rafters, okay. And since these trusses are only about 3 meters from each other, the purlins will be spanning across only 3 meters as well. Okay. So how would you place the purlins? The purlins would be placed by the help of these cleats. Okay. These cleats mark the points where the purlins would come. Okay. Like if I look at so if I want to explain to you what I mean by that, let me just see if I can very quickly get one of these angle sections over here. So if these are going to form your purlins, what's going to happen is that I would place my purlins like this over here. Okay, obviously they will be aligned to that. So let me just. Yeah. Okay. And you can see that the purlin is now resting on this cleat over here. Okay. And it will get now this purlin will obviously go and span across the entire roof like this. So let's do that as well. I'm going to do one bay over here, not the entire thing. Okay. And then you would have all these purlins at each of the locations. So now the purlins are forming the next layer of the roof structure.
And they're just resting on the cleats. They're not bolted or welded.
No, they are welded. Yeah, they are welded. But in order to weld them, you have to first get them where you need them to be, right?
Right.
Right. So that is the point. How would you actually know where to place these cleats? Right? You can't be on on top over here, which is about whatever 20 meters from the ground, and then start fiddling with your cleats or fiddling with but trying to get in the proper position, right? So which means that when you're top there, you need to know exactly where these purlins are going to be placed, and that is going to be done by the means of these cleats. Okay, you can go up there, you can place your cleats in a proper position, you can measure them out, you can have a proper level there, and then when the next person comes in to try to place the purlins, they know exactly where to place them. Okay, see, the whole point of construction, you have to understand, is to look at the whole process of construction in the form of these stages, okay, of how things are going to happen and when, and what is the easiest way of doing them. And this is the easiest way of doing this. Okay, so if a person is going to be up there, they cannot be counted on to be able to work work with a lot of finesse. So you have to make it easier for them. So what they would do is they would come up here. Now they would simply weld this part of your purlin to this cleat, and then you would form this thing over here. And the distance between these cleats and all these purlins would be depend on the kind of roofing sheet you're using. So if you're using, let's say, like an 8x4 PVC sheet or a AC sheet or whatever it is, okay, that sheet, then the purlins would have to be about, say, 8 feet apart, right? Because then the sheet can span across that distance. But if you're using Mangalore tiles are small. They are like 350 length, right? So your battens or whatever is supposed to be come on top of it would have to be at that kind of a short distance. So here, since we are doing an industrial building, I would use probably the AC sheets, and so the purlins can be at a distance of, say, about 2 meters or 2.1 meters from each other, and that would not be a problem at all for me. Yeah. So are you able to understand what I'm saying over here, or are there any doubts or questions? No. Okay. So again, the detail of this would probably be something we will cover at a later stage. But that is basically the idea behind how the different members are getting formed. Okay. Now that is the roof. If I come to the floor, now here I have stopped at this point, because beyond this, the kind of floor you'll have on top of this is again your problem. Okay, not your problem, I should say, but your prerogative. Okay. Now let us say, for example, if you remember when you did your timber floors, at that time you had these joists that went across this way, right? So if you imagine this to be some kind of a joist member, which would, so maybe I can use this one. Okay, and let's make it smaller as well because it's a joist. Yep. So how would you place it? You would probably place it something like this. If it's a all right, and then you would place it at a very close distance to each other, right? Maybe at a distance of, say, 450 mm from each other. Now, why would you do that? Why would you place some of these members so close to each other? The reason is that if you are supposed doing a timber floor on top of this, or even if you're doing like a stone tile floor on top of this, okay, the stone tiles can't span more than this distance that you can see between these two joists, right? So you would have to have these members here to support those stone tiles or to support the timber flooring. Okay. On the other hand, if you're using something like a steel decking floor, I believe some of you are using that steel decking floor, then this distance between between these two members, the primary and the tertiary being over here, this span is a good enough span for that decking floor to for a decking floor to use. So you won't require these joist members to support that decking floor. Okay. So again, this basically just forms the basic framework of the floor. How the remaining part comes is entirely up to you. In fact, if you're going to cast an RCC floor on top of this, okay, by using the proper kind of shuttering from below and everything, then maybe even these members won't be required. You know, if I just remove these members, then I need to have a floor which is going to be able to span across this entire opening, and an RCC floor can span across 3 meters, so that's not an issue at all, right? So again, the density of the grid that you're forming in your floor depends on the kind of floor covering or the kind of finished floor that you're thinking about. Okay, if it's a timber floor finish, then you have to have a denser kind of a floor finish. If it's an RCC floor, you would probably be okay for you to work with a less dense sort of a structural floor member. Okay, all right. One more thing which I want to talk about to you guys is regarding this. Now, this is a thing that I did not cover in the video. Okay, was the concept of the base plate. Okay, now just like we have a gusset plate here to connect different steel members together, here we can see that on a vertical level, since we are placing this tie member on top of the column, you will obviously need some kind of a flat surface to place those things, and those are provided by the means of these base plates. So which is this one. Okay, the one I'm highlighted. Okay, and the base plate is again a connection through which any kind of these connections will happen. Okay, if you have a connection, so if you see here over here how the base plate is placed, there is a cleat here. Okay, which forms this kind of a stable surface on which the base plate can get placed. Okay, and then there can be welded or bolted, depends on the decision that you make regarding that. Okay, there's the same similar thing over here on the other side as well. Okay, and that is basically how the connection will happen. All right, now I have to emphasize one more thing. I will just I'll finish this now, but I will emphasize one thing, is that these are not the only ways in which columns or things like that can be formed. Okay, there are different ways in which columns get formed. For example, if you feel like having a column like this for the thing is too much of a wastage, you may go for something like this, which is a composite column. So you can see what is happening here. You got two different eye sections, okay, connected together by the means of these plates. Okay, so these are called as bracing. Okay, I'm sorry, these are ledges. So you can place them like this and you can connect them like that. Okay, or you may have four different angle sections which are formed like this and they're connected by the means of these plates. All right, and in a lot of cases, if you, for example, if you go to your railway stations, you'll be able to find these kind of columns that are supporting the roofs. Okay. Another question that often gets asked is, how do I connect my column or maybe if I have a RCC beam, how do I connect an RCC beam to a steel member? Okay. So again, the answer is by the means of a base plate. So let me just show you guys what I mean by that. I hope I have that image somewhere over here. If I don't, I'll just draw it for you. Okay, never mind. I'll just draw it. Okay. So what would I get in terms of say an RCC column? Okay, that I want to connect to a steel column. Okay. Again, a fairly simple sort of exercise. What we do is, suppose this is your RCC column that you have of whatever size, right? So this is the one. Okay, and I want to place a steel column on top of the RCC column. Maybe just like so. Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, this connection is unstable. Okay, you can't just place it like that. So what we do instead is we take ourselves a base plate. Okay, and the base plate gets placed on top of the sorry on top of the RCC column. Okay, and again, it's what is going to happen in this particular case is that while the column is being sort of being casted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a bolt in the column itself. Okay, so how that is done is that, so if I, so for example, I have a bolt lying around here somewhere. There it is. Yeah. So I would probably have something like this. Let's remove the nut for a time being, the nut and the washer for a time being. Okay, and what will happen is that this kind of a bolt, now though not exactly this kind of a bolt obviously, but something that is called as an anchor bolt will get placed in the column itself. Okay, it will kind of get embedded into the column. Right, so say it is like embedded into the column like this, of course comparatively deeper than this. Okay, and I will have more of these along the different parts, so I might have one more like, so this is what it would sort of look like. Okay, now obviously I'm not talking about the grouting and stuff like that. I'm just trying to explain to you the basic idea. So this is what the column would look like when it's ready to receive my base plate. Okay, and what I would do is I would punch holes in this base plate over here. Okay, and then I would place the base plate accordingly to the required location. Okay, and then I would take all of these bolts and I would fit them to the, yeah. So once I place these bolts where I need them to be, now the base plate is connected to the column. Okay. And the next thing obviously would be to connect the base plate to the steel stanchion that we require, right? So where did the stanchion go? Yeah, there it is. So I want to connect this stanchion to my base plate. So how would I do it? Again, the question is very simple. I can't just place it like this and be done with it. So I will have to add some more kind of elements to it. What kind of elements are those? Again, like I said, they're cleats. Okay. So I would use my cleats. Like for example, let me borrow this one. Right, you would have one of these over here. You would have probably have one more on the other side. Right, please truncate this. Yeah, and similarly you would have those and on over here as well. So I can just that's the issue with SketchUp though. Yeah, and similarly on the other side you'll have one as well. Okay, so basically that's how you would connect your steel column to a base plate. Okay, you may even add a gusset plate here as well for more for more kind of stability and all that. So basically the point is that as the loads increase, you would have more and more layers of layers of members to add stability to a particular connection. Yeah, and that's again the question of question of calculations, which we are not going to get into right now. But these basically are the ways in which steel connections and steel frame structures get formed. Now this is again this particular connection that I showed you is relevant in the sense of that maybe you might have a RCC footing, which on top of which you might have a steel column. So in that case, such a connection would get formed. That this column would go all the way down and form the RCC foundation, and above, as it comes above the ground, you would have this kind of a connection, and then the remaining structure would be a steel structure. Yeah. So that is I think all regarding this particular situation. Yeah. So are there any questions or doubts? Do we? Okay, wait. I think Fleur has a question. Sorry, just a minute, Fleur. Yeah. How do we decide which joints are welded and which are just nut bolted? Okay, good question. Okay, so every the joints welding and bolting and even riveting, they have their own pros and cons. Okay. Now see what we do when we bolt things. is that we actually puncture a hole in both the members that we are connecting, and what we would do is that then what that does is that it actually weakens the actual members. All right, but the advantage of bolting is that it is very easily reversible. All right. Secondly, it also is useful, especially when you're working in situations where you don't really have the ability to weld things. Okay, especially like for example when you're doing a field work. Okay, so for example, if you're sitting on top of a beam and you're connecting two members together, you might not always have an electric arc gun with you to weld two members together. So in that case, the bolting becomes much easier. All right. Now, as far as the welding is concerned, welding has got its own strengths. For example, welding does not require any previous work on the members. Like we don't have to puncture holes in the members, so that makes it much easier to that makes it better. Also, welding is comparatively better aesthetically because you don't really see those. Of course, that's an objective situation. Like for example, in some cases, the bolts might actually be bolts or rivets might actually be by themselves an aesthetic sort of expression of something. So so in that case you might go for that, but on the whole the welds are they give a much cleaner sort of a finish than the bolts do. So that is a decision that is up to you regarding how you want to do it. Actually, I want to go talk a little bit more on this. See, there are different situations. Like for example, when you will learn about strengths of these joints. Okay, you will learn about shop joints and field joints. Okay, shop joints are those which are done in a controlled situation, like they're done in a workshop. So you are sitting on the floor, you have your workshop, you have your all your instruments with you, and you can work very properly. Okay, so that joint is considered to be stronger than a field joint where you are actually on the field and you don't really have all the resources with you. So so when we calculate the strength, we consider the field joints like the field rivets or the field bolts to be, or a field weld, sorry, to be weaker than the shop rivets or the shop welds. Okay, so that is how you decide which joints are welded and which are just nut bolted. So if you see how the yeah, so if you see how that particular in my particular case, I had done the previous joints, like when you put the cleats on the columns, those were done as welds, but when you connected them to column on the site, they were done as bolts, so they were easier to do when you're sitting up there on the beam to connect it. Okay. Ambika is asking, this will need grouting. I believe by this she means the column to the column to the base plate connection. Yes, it will require grouting, and I was trying to look for an example of that. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it, but I think I have it because I don't know where I kept it. For what she means by grouting is, a grout is basically a very liquidy mixture of water and cement. Okay, so what that does is, so when you have this kind of a connection between sorry, let me just get back to my, let me just share my screen again. Yeah. So here I have done a very simple sort of example of what I've shown over here. But what would happen, as this one is saying, Ambika is saying, is that you would have a kind of a grout which is placed between these two members. Okay, so that kind of levels out the top surface of that column, because as you know, columns are RCC. The top surface might not be level, so you would use that to kind of finish off that part. A grout is basically again kind of a like a very slurry mixture of cement and water and sand, obviously, and that would put into this, that would harden and kind of form this upper surface. Okay, and also the grout will be put into the holes that you made for the anchor bolts. Okay, so that is what the grout is there. But again, I didn't want to complicate the thing, so I didn't show it right now. But yes, that's where the grout would come. Uh, for your average low-rise construction, are the bolts fastened by wrench or are power tools required? If you have power tools, you would use them. Otherwise, if you have, like, for example, if you're doing like a staircase, like a small staircase from one floor to another, like going to a mezzanine, a lot of cases these bolts would be hand fastened. Okay. That won't really be an issue. But if you have power tools, you can use them. Okay. If you the moment you talk about, see, the moment you talk about high-rise construction and you're talking about kind of large members being connected to each other, you don't bolt them at. I mean, you don't really use the bolts. You would use the either you would weld them, or in some cases or older cases you would use hot rivets. Okay. Uh, how do the column beam connections change in case of a round column? Okay. In case of a round column, obviously, because you don't have the surface in order to attach it to the thing, you would have a seat cleat, obviously, because then that's where the column would come. Okay. But then you would have to, like, kind of place it in a sort of a fashion that you have to kind of you would kind of fashion that and that particular that particular cleat. Okay. And so what would happen is you would end up with welded connections. Okay. That's what would happen in the case of a round column. Do circular steel cross sections work with similar joints? So yeah, they actually, the logic remains the same, but we would have but that is the case, but that pretty much it's like you would have to design that joint in the particular way how they would get fixed to each other. But the idea remains the same. Like, you would have either welded connection or a bolted connection. Okay. If you are having a bolted connection, there would be like two cleats that would come in the picture, and then they would get bolted to both the members, and then that would sort of happen. Okay. What if at some oops what if at some point I don't have orthogonal joints? That's the question, Ruhin. So yeah, so if you don't have orthogonal joints like column beam connections, now what would take place in that situation? Like, for example, I just show on this itself. uh, so say you have something like this. Why is this not? Yeah. Let me just get another. Now here, obviously, I'm not talking about a member which is like of this size, but I'm just going to explain what I mean by using these members. Say it's a 30 degree angle, let us say. Okay. Now I'm connecting. Sorry. Two members like this, say, for example. Okay. This would be a very rare case, but just bear with me. Okay. Okay. Now in this particular case, what I would do is that I would actually cut this angle section in this way. Okay. So Okay, so if you can just ignore this part over here of the section, then it would actually get cut like this along this line, all right, and then it would get connected to this. Now here you would actually have the cleat on this point, okay, so you can actually take take the cleat, sorry, and place it along this point over here where the two angles are. So here you can see, so it's a proper 90-degree kind of a connection, so that is not a problem. So you can connect this web with this flange using a cleat. Now as far as the this portion is concerned, there you have to build up a cleat. Okay, there you would have two different plates which would go at different angles. Okay, so you would have maybe one plate that goes like this. So I'm having some problems with this thing, but if I hope you understand what I mean by this. So another plate would come this way, and you would build up that section. Okay. Now built up sections are obviously a thing. Okay. In which case you would have that kind of a thing that acts as a cleat for you. Okay, and then you would place this kind of angle like this. So that's how the non-orthogonal sections would work.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
And what if, sorry, but what
yeah,
if
yeah, go ahead.
they're on the same height? I mean, like, say the beams that you have drawn, niche, I mean, they are not perpendicular to each other. I mean, they're not getting connected to the column in an
Okay, so
orthogonal.
like a
Yeah,
non-orthogonal in plan.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
that too.
yeah, so you would have a gusset plate of that over there, na? So that would kind of create. So let me just tell you what I mean. So you would have. So wait, let me just get rid of this. Yeah. So suppose you are going to connect a column here, which is at a different, of a different at a different angle. Then what would actually take place is that you would have a gusset plate, or I should say a base plate, which would be at that particular point. So suppose I want to connect it over here. Yeah, okay. Now all I have to do is now maybe extend this plate a bit. Of course, I would cut it because I'm not going to do all of that now. But just to explain what I mean. Now this is obviously not going to get cantilevered like this. You would have like an angle cleat below and all that to support this plate. But then your beam could actually come and sit on that plate. Okay. Say whatever angle is there. So say I place my beam like this. Now this is something that can happen. All right. So you would have like a kind of a what you can call it. You can have sort of a seat here, okay, on which that beam could come and sit, and obviously this beam would extend up over here. Like I would cut it at that angle, and then I would weld it over here as well. But this is how the seat would actually come and work out. Now here you can see that what is the problem with this is that, sorry, yeah, so you can see that what the problem here is that this particular plate is not really getting enough support that is required, right? So what you would have to do in that particular case is that you would have to actually add more cleats here at the bottom, and that's what we call as moment resisting connections, because there's a large kind of bending moment being formed over here. So what I would do in that particular case is, or what you might even see, or you might even observe in many cases, is that you might have these kind of members. okay, at various intervals that are supporting this plate over here. Okay, so sorry.
मम्मी को फोन वटूने
So you may have these kind of members that are supporting that. Yeah, go to that side now. So they are placed like this, and again they are welded to the flange over here. Yeah. So these kind of connections also might get formed. So that is again something that you have to design. Okay, according to your individual sort of requirement. They might happen on this side as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. What if at some point, if I have a beam coming in as an arc, would I curve the gusset plate as well? No, I don't understand your question. Like if the beam is coming as an arc,
Yeah, because I have a radial plan. So if my beam is kind of coming in.
No, I mean the in plan or
as the one of my columns is along.
So it's
plan.
In plan it's like circular.
My circular plan is this, and then I'll have circumference beams, right?
Okay, yeah. So if you have a circular plan or a circular beam, first of all, the circular beam would, if it's in steel, it would have to get built up like that. Okay, with part sections. Okay, and then if you kind of connect it to something else, then the gusset plate would be curved in the sense that wherever it connects to the beam, that's where it would get cut according to the flange, according to the web of the beam. So I think that is what you mean.
So are you saying I would have like three beams attached at angles of like 120, 120, 120 to form a pseudo curve?
Yeah, obviously, because you can't really unless you are willing to like get a custom made circular rolled section for you. Then
exactly.
Because the section would come in straight lines. Okay. So if you want to create a circular section, then you have to cut it into parts and kind of create that kind of a curve for yourself.
And at the joints of that curve, I don't need any column support or anything like that. It'll support itself as if it's a curve.
You'll be welding.
Achha. But there's no like column required at that joint, right? That joint isn't weakened by.
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? Doubts?
Yeah, Shantanu, can you please change your view so that the beams and all the beams of the mezzanine are clearly visible?
Mezzanine?
I had a doubt over there.
Yeah. Bolo.
Yeah, so over here the secondary beams they are cut into two because of the columns.
The primary beam.
Yeah. So what's happening over here at this middle part where there's no beam, where there's no column in between? So there is they're like four connections over here.
No, here they are resting on the secondary beams, no?
Okay.
See, that's what I said, Naki. These beams, okay, they're resting on the columns. Okay?
Yeah.
These beams are resting on these beams. And these beams are resting on these beams.
Okay, no, I thought that this is this secondary beam is spanning the whole 12 meters. So
No, it's not. That's why we have broken up this part into. So that's what it does. We break this up into smaller parts. Yeah. And then we kind of
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Or should we? Okay. All right, fine. So I think that's it for this lecture. Unless anybody, any other faculty wants to make any. Yeah, Mamta.
Great, Shantanu. Thank you for that, because we've been doing a couple of classes speaking about the connection, shear connection, moment connection, etc. But this kind of demonstration really helped.
Thank you. If you want, we can always make this a bit more detailed with more examples, and we can show them as well.
Yeah, sure. Ankush, you want to add something?
No, I think this was great, because you were assembling it in front of us. I think it was really great. I think because even during class, a lot of times when these kind of, especially the angular connections, I mean, I think I spoke about it in my group today. I don't know how much must have gotten through, but I think demonstrating it on SketchUp like this was great. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you.
Could we have the SketchUp file, or is it too large or something to share?
The SketchUp file is mine, so I won't be sharing it. But no. I'll share the SketchUp file. Not a problem. I'll see what the size is. Okay. If it's too large, I'll maybe just truncate some of the groups and components and what I'll try to share it.
Or just share the video only, no?
I'll share the video also. Yeah, that's all. That's also fine. Yeah.
ठीक है.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, great, fantastic.
Okay.
So what exactly was the term used for tubular sections? If I'm joining a tubular maybe section to an I section, that's a beam or something like that. Oh, what do I?
What?
If I have tubular sections, I just
No. I got that. What is the question?
Column beam connection would be the same, right?
It's the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No difference. Fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.